ARCC is paying a 10.4% yield. Why is it so high? And more importantly, is that yield sustainable? Ares Capital Corporation, ticker symbol ARCC, has historically averaged about a 9% yield, but more recently that's edged up to over 10%. And if those yields sound high, it's because ARCC is a business development company, or BDC. And if you've never heard of a BDC, that's because it's a relatively small niche in investing. In fact, there are only about 50 BDCs that are currently publicly traded. If you're from the US, you're more likely to have heard of real estate investment trusts, or REITs. There are over 200 of those, but we'll cover REITs in another episode. Okay, so why can a BDC pay a high yield? The short answer is that BDCs, like REITs, are required to pay out 90% of their net investment income in the form of dividends to their investors. And by doing so, the BDC is exempt from paying corporate taxes on that income. So how do they make money, and what does business development actually mean? Well, I think of BDCs as a hybrid between private equity, venture capital, and banks. They invest in small to medium-sized businesses, generally less than a market value of $250 million. And that investment could be in the form of a loan or in the purchase of stock, but mostly it's in the form of a loan. So the BDC makes money from the interest they earn on those loans, or from selling any stock that they purchase from those companies, but at a profit. If you'd like some more detail on the inner workings of BDCs, I'll include a link in the description to an article that lays it out, published by the SEC. Now, I said they pay out the 90% of income to investors for that favorable tax treatment. That only leaves 10% to be retained by the BDC for the purpose of growing the company. And 10% is not a lot. So BDCs are not going to grow anything like a growth stock. And for that reason, you should expect that most of your returns, if you invest in a BDC, will come in the form of the yield that you receive. Not all BDCs are created equal. Some make better investments than others, and I certainly wouldn't invest in all of them. But ARCC is recognized as one of the best, so let's take a closer look. This is what caught my attention about ARCC. Take a look at the dividend history. First of all, it's long. It goes back to December 2004. Secondly, it's fairly consistent, and apart from taking a hit during the 2008 recession, it's been either flat or trending up slightly, which is exactly what I'm looking for. Let's look more closely at that recession, because it was devastating back in 2008. The S&P fell about 50%, peak to trough, and the ARCC price fell even further than that. But as an income investor, I'm much more interested in the monthly payouts than the stock price, and the monthly payouts weren't nearly as volatile. For the 2008 recession, there was one dividend cut. In June of 2009, the dividend was reduced by 16.6%. That certainly would have sucked, but not the end of the world. And then when the pandemic hit in 2020, there was another cut. This time it was just 2.5%. Not too bad. But big picture, if you just held tight from December 2004, those dividends would have grown from 30 cents a share to 48 cents a share, an increase of 60% in the dividend payouts. Now, you would have had to stomach that price volatility, but I would have been happy with that income stream over the long term. By the way, that chart I showed you, that's my go-to chart for dividend history, and it's from a website called Seeking Alpha, which is also available as an app. I'll put a link in the description. They have a paid version that unlocks a whole bunch of other features, but the dividend history chart going back the full length of time is free. A quick side note about dividend charts. They typically don't show special dividends. If a company has an unexpectedly profitable quarter, or perhaps an anomaly like a large capital gain from a sale, they can elect to pay a special dividend. And those dividends are put into that separate category so that they don't create an expectation that they'll be repeated in perpetuity. In 2022, ARCC paid out 4 special dividends of 3 cents each, which is not bad for a year that was generally pretty crappy for the stock market. Okay, so ARCC has this long history of paying out dividends consistently over many years, and that's great. But what about the future? Is that likely to continue? We'll cover that in the next episode when I present my bull case for ARCC and my bear case, and I'll wrap it up with my investment thesis on it and whether I'm buying it or not. More armchair income coming soon. Actually, part 2 about ARCC, that's coming really soon.